USL Pro's Board of Governors met last week in Portland, Oregon for a series of meetings around the MLS All-Star Game. I got the chance to talk with USL President Tim Holt about those meetings, the league's progression since 2011, and the development of the league's partnership with Major League Soccer. Well, Tim, welcome back from Portland. I know you've had a busy week of meetings with the Board of Governors as well as potential new franchises for USL Pro 2015 and beyond. What was your biggest takeaway from the event, though, up in the Pacific Northwest?
Well, just how much excitement is around the growth of the league right now. And, growth in a couple of different ways. Growth certainly in numbers is 14 teams this year and already 18 announced for next year. And that's not even a final number yet, but also growth in terms of just how our individual clubs have been growing themselves, fan support, corporate support, the quality of play on the field, new venues. So in every different way that you would measure growth, growth's been happening. So it's an exciting time, certainly, for USL Pro, and it was sort of brought into greater focus when we had all of our members with us for a couple of days last week in Portland.
Now, all of the teams that have been announced for the 2015 season, looking at clubs like St. Louis FC and Austin Aztecs, were in Portland, in addition to the current members of the league. How are things progressing in those markets as they get set to join USL Pro next season?
Things are progressing very well, generally speaking. I think all of those clubs have had a proper amount of lead time to be able to prepare. You look at a club like clubs like Tulsa and Colorado Springs, which we announced in December of last year, that are now 8-9 months into their preparation stage, and others that were announced a couple months later, like the St. Louis's, and then Austin being a completely different situation, completely running a club at a very high level, almost at a professional level for several years now to begin with. So each in their own individual ways are coming along very well. There's a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of learning to be done, but when you compare that to startup or expansion clubs of eras gone past, these clubs are way ahead of the game.
There definitely seemed to be a lot of optimism on social media among the new ownership groups that they were getting into USL Pro at just the right time. What does that mean for the health and the future growth of the league beyond 2015?
Well, I interpret that to mean that where we are right now as a league headed into 2015 is exciting. Keep in mind, we've done a lot of work over the previous 3 or 4 years with a lot of committed clubs that have been committed anywhere between those 3 and 4 years and 20 years to build this property up to a point where we're at the jumping off point to incorporate and integrate a lot of the aspects of USL Pro that we think make the model work, such as the regional competition model, and all kinds of different things, both on and off the field, that really make it a strong property. So these teams are coming in, really on sort of in the middle of our plan to reinvigorate that property. So good things are happening. I think it means that we're hitting our marks as to where we thought we'd be at this 3rd or 4th year after the restructure of our pro divisions. But we certainly, as the individual teams do as a league, we have a lot of ground to cover over the course of the next decade.
Now, in addition to the new teams that have been officially announced for next season, there have been some MLS teams that have been vocal about establishing a second team in the same vein as the LA Galaxy 2 for next season. Did you get a chance to meet with those leadership groups while you were in Portland?
Yeah, we met with several MLS clubs. It was a good opportunity to do so, obviously, with all USL Pro and MLS clubs there, to further the conversations. Those certainly weren't the beginning. A lot of these conversations go back, a year and a half, 2 years. The Galaxy were the first to jump into the fray, and they've done a remarkable job of really blazing a pathway for other MLS teams to look at this. And we have, anywhere between, I'd say 3 to 5 MLS clubs that represent likely entries for the 2015 USL Pro season. So, I think with those clubs, it's not a matter of whether they want to do it or whether they're prepared to do it. It's just, entry point into the year and making sure that they can do it in the right way. I think all of them see the player development benefits that come with doing your own team. Obviously, there's an investment that comes with that, and beyond both of those things, it's making sure that it's done in a way that it's a proper soccer club and soccer franchise at a USL Pro level in its own right, in terms of how games are presented, fan support, operations, and that there's just a dedicated attention and focus to doing it properly. That's where we're discerning on our end, and that those clubs share that sort of common philosophy.
There was a quote that I saw come out of MLS Vice President Mark Abbott's meeting at the All-Star game that basically began the partnership with the USL, either through an LA Galaxy 2 type model or the affiliation model, has been very productive. When you hear that or see it in print, what does it mean to you?
Well, we're encouraged by it. MLS have been wonderful partners both at the league and the individual team levels. I would concur with the use of the term productive to describe the relationship. It's still early days. We're only a year and a half into this formal relationship, which has had a lot of different sort of aspects to it. We've done the crossover games. We've done affiliations, which have jumped from 4 the first year to 11 this season. As we talked about before, the Galaxy becoming the first team to put their own owned and operated team in USL Pro, and some of the off-field initiatives, marketing collaborations, and different stuff that fans might not see, but is helping raise the bar in USL Pro and for USL Pro teams. So this is just the first part of that. So I think it's been productive from in terms of all parties' viewpoints, but really it's just the foundation for what we intend to do in the future and through collaboration with MLS and its clubs.
Now, we got to see some of the players who have benefited from the partnership in action in the Chipotle MLS homegrown game last week. You look at a guy like OKC Energy FC goalkeeper John Kempin, who took MVP honors in that game, and the Galaxy 2's Bradford Jameson, 6 goals for Los Dos this season. Seeing players who have been part of USL Pro this season get that sort of stage has to be really satisfying, and maybe a sign of things are moving in the direction everyone hoped for when this partnership began.
No, I think you got it 100% right. Satisfying for sure, exciting for sure. Just sitting there watching that game and watching Kempin stand on his head, essentially, and in the game and really perform and know that no small part of that has to do with the meaningful games that he's getting this year. With OKC Energy as part of their affiliation with Sporting KC. So there's a benefit from one of the affiliations that's taken place as part and parcel of this. And then you look at, Bradford Jameson and then the games that he's been getting as a result of the Galaxy starting their own team, which he may or may not have, gotten through any other, different number of ways. But so those are the two sort of avenues that are opportunities for MLS and USL Pro to work together. And, I think you picked the two perfect players. It's not just those guys, but those guys obviously have had standout seasons and stood out in the homegrown game, which was a lot of fun to watch.
Well, they went up against a Portland Timbers U23s team that certainly seemed like it held its own. And that's obviously a credit to what the PDL is being able to accomplish, helping develop guys who are still in college. A credit to what the Timbers have been able to do with Jim Wallace and that organization on the PDL level. And you look at guys out there like Fatai Alashe, who's now back at Michigan State, Christian Roldan, who's heading back to the University of Washington. They seem as though they're very close to being ready to make that jump to the next level, and hopefully will be part of the MLS Super Draft next year.
Yeah, and you look at just talking about the Timbers as a club, and we use that term. And when we say a club more than a team, it's sort of the vertical integration of player development from the first team and then through to the under 23 team, and they've been longtime members of the PDL. I think one of the things was striking that you watched the U20 Timbers U23s, the PDL team, and it was the exact same style of play and system of play that Coach Porter uses with his first team. So they were employing that. So, they're able to evaluate the players within that system. They've given so many players an opportunity to be able to do that. And so not only are they a very strong example of a pro team that has embraced the PDL model, they're not the only one. There are 12 different MLS and USL Pro teams that now own and operate or are directly affiliated with PDL teams. We expect that number is going to grow significantly over the next year or two. And what it does is it sort of breaks down these obstacles between the professional game and the developmental leagues before it. So, and it defines the pathway, even further. And there's just been countless examples over time. So the Timbers are really a good example of that, and one of the more progressive professional soccer clubs in the country. Yeah,
you mentioned that one of the guys that was playing for the MLS homegrown team, Stephen Evans, played for the Timbers U23s in the past. He's with Sacramento Republic now FC, getting experience, having signed a homegrown contract. So a perfect illustration of what you were talking about. We're approaching the end of the fourth regular season in USL Pro. As you look back on the formation and the way that the league's developed since 2011, what do you think the biggest lessons you've learned are?
Good. That's a really good question. I alluded earlier to the fact that we sort of did this restructuring and came up with a model that we wanted to put into place. And I think one of the lessons is that we've made a tremendous amount of progress. I think it's undeniable that this league is in a vastly stronger place than it was 3 or 4 years ago by every possible metric. But one of the things that you also learn is that, progress and growth also doesn't happen in a linear fashion. We've had some setbacks during that period of time. We've had teams not perform at the level that we've needed them to perform. But I think in each of those situations, we've addressed those issues by either finding different solutions. In some cases, we've had to remove teams from the competition, or they've moved into the PDL. In other situations, we found new ownership. And we've continued to raise the bar and the standards. And so I think the biggest takeaway and lesson, other than just continuing on with your plan and believing in your plan and executing your plan, is that, you can never accept where you are. So while we feel very pleased with the progress we've made to date, we're not anywhere close to where we feel we need to be in order for this league to be a success for all of its stakeholders, for our owners to be profitable on an annual operating basis, to increase the value of our franchises, and to have a competition that more and more fans, a greater number of fans in each individual market, really, really enjoy and are entertained by, and that the quality of soccer continues to go up. We make progress there, but our goals are much, much higher than where we are in 2014.
Orlando City currently leads the league. They will be moving up to Major League Soccer next season. We've also seen a lot of talk about Sacramento possibly joining them in the future. What does it say about those ownership groups and fan bases that, in the case of Orlando, have been able to fulfill their vision, and in Sacramento Republic FC's case, have made a really strong case for joining them potentially in MLS in the future?
Well, a couple things. One is that there's no magic formula for success. If there's a common denominator, it's the willingness to have a good plan, to invest in the market, to invest in the club and the fans, to put a good product out there, and just essentially to really work, put a proper staff together and work. I think the common denominator of, Seattle and Portland, Vancouver and Montreal before, and then Orlando and now Sacramento, is that all of those had exceptional front offices on the business side. The product on the field was very, very strong. The environment at the game was very, very strong. And they've been out in their communities, and they're active in the communities and doing that. So it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of investment. It's a lot of execution on their front. And each time we have a successful situation like that, it provides an example and an inspiration or an or aspirational type of moment for the next group. Sacramento's looked at the pathway that Orlando's blazed, and Orlando looked at the pathway that Portland blazed, and Portland looked at the pathway that Seattle blazed. So you have more and more of these examples in different situations, in different markets with different dynamics. But again, not accepting someone else's or cynics' concepts of what success is, and not having a ceiling on that, and believing that really with this sport right now, people just keep setting the bar higher and higher. I think if you had asked anyone before the season if Sacramento would be averaging 15,000 fans a game and had a couple of 20,000 seat sellouts and selling out their own stadium week in and week out, you would have said, well, that's not even possible. No one's ever done that. Well, now they've done that. So they've reset the bar in a higher place. And, one thing that's eclipsed is the amazing expansion launch of OKC Energy. They're at 99% capacity of their stadium this year. So that's a remarkable situation. And the Galaxy and what they've done in terms of creating a model that didn't exist in this country. So we're very proud of all the different situations that we've had, and just in awe, really, of teams like Orlando and Sacramento, which just keep raising the bar for everybody else, and it drives everybody else forward.
Now, talking about Oklahoma City and the Energy FC and the great job that they've done, as you mentioned, in the terraces and in the stands, it's really seems as though they're in a good space right now to join Sacramento and the Galaxy 2 in the playoffs this season. What does it mean to see the success that they've been able to have, not just off the field, but on the field, with Jimmy Nielsen putting together a very, very good roster for their opening year.
Yeah, it's a tough league. As anyone will tell you, the coaches that have been around this at any level of American professional soccer, it's a good league. So week in and week out. So it's not just, high performance or making a cup run. This is consistency over, 20 games, 22 games, 24 games now, but over 28 games. So for an expansion team to make the playoffs in this league with only 8 slots available to do so is a pretty remarkable feat. I know Oklahoma City wouldn't want us talking about that too much because there's still a lot of work to do to clinch a spot, but just to be in that race in a way where they're right in the thick of it is pretty impressive. I think it's a credit to Coach Nielsen and a lot of the experience that he brings over there, but it's an organizational type of thing as well too. You hire good people and you bring them in there and you give them the resources to do the job, and they build a team smartly, and they take advantage of the affiliations, and good things can happen. But as we've seen with this competition too, we've got some teams making late runs up the table. So unless you've mathematically clinched your spot, then you need to play out the string.
Well, Tim, thank you for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate it. Certainly should be a really exciting final 4 weeks of the season as we head into the playoffs. And definitely a lot to look forward to for the end of this season, but 2015 and beyond, it sounds like.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. A lot of fun.
The USL Pro regular season continues this weekend with 8 contests, including OKC Energy FC hosting the LA Galaxy 2 on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us for all of the action on youtube.com/USL Pro and follow the league on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and Instagram to keep up with news and results from around the league.